Hi, everyone. We're ready to start our new book here today, The Brixton Brothers, The Case of Mistaken Identity. Um, I picked this book for a few reasons. One, it's a lot shorter than Bud Not Buddy. Everyone wanted a shorter book. And I think you'll notice as we get into it that your sort of daily readings are a lot shorter than Bud Not Buddy. The other reason I picked it is because it is a mystery type of book, and we hadn't really done one like that this school year. But I wanted to do the first chapter. I wanted to read it to you because there's a few parts in the first chapter where I want to explain a few words and things like that. In the first chapter, the main character, his name is Steve Brixton, is going to talk about this detective series he likes called The Bailey Brothers. And that's kind of like these old books here, Hardy Boys, sort of an old series where they go and they solve mysteries and things like that. And there were a bunch of these Hardy Boys books made, and I think they make them new now. They make them into graphic novels. So if you like the mystery book we're going to be reading, you might want to pick up one of these. You won't understand this now, but after we get into the Brixton Brothers a little bit, it's funny that I happened to grab this Hardy Boys book because there's hundreds of these books. This one's called The Missing Chums, and that word chums is going to come in later in this book. So I just thought that was funny. Anyway, so I'm going to I'm going to be doing a bunch of chapters with you guys. Some days I'm going to record a video like this and you'll just watch it and follow along. And then some days there's the option to meet on a Zoom meeting and we'll kind of read it together and talk about it. But on the days when I'm doing the reading, I'd like you to have your book in front of you following along just like we would have done in class this past year, all right? Hey, it's July 10th today. You've got about a month and I guess a month and a week, 5 weeks maybe, from today until school starts back up. So this is a great way to keep your brain in gear and hopefully maybe you're reading other books too. I just finished a book last night and so I'm starting this book here called The Old Lion, and it's a kind of a story version of Theodore Roosevelt's life. It's not a biography. It's kind of like if you'd see a movie on someone, I suppose. At least that's what it's supposed to be. So as soon as I'm done reading this first chapter, I'm going to be getting back to that. So anyway, the first chapter, if you want to turn there, and if you ever need to pause the video to, get your book and things like that, you can do that. But there's a word here in the chapter title that I want to talk about. The chapter's called America's Favorite Super Sleuths. And that's the word I wanted to talk about because Steve's going to use that word a bunch here in the first chapter and throughout the book is the word sleuth. And usually if I was reading this book in class, I'd be asking them to try and figure out what the word sleuth means. But I'm going to tell you, a sleuth is a detective. And if you don't know what a detective is someone who solves crimes or solves mysteries. So a sleuth is a detective, someone who solves mysteries. So I'm going to read the first chapter here, which is really just an introductory chapter. We get to learn about Steve and not much else. So here we go. Steve Brixton, a.k.a., also known as Steve, was reading on his too small bed. He was having trouble getting comfortable, and for a few good reasons. His feet were hanging off the edge. Bed springs were poking his ribs. His sheets were full of cinnamon graham cracker crumbs. But the main reason Steve was uncomfortable was that he was lying on an old copy of the Guinness Book of World Records, which was 959 pages long, and which he had hidden under his mattress. If for some reason you were looking under Steve's mattress and found the Guinness Book of World Records, you'd probably think it was just an ordinary book. That was the point. Open it up, and you'd see that Steve had cut an identical rectangle out from the middle of every one of its pages. Then he had pasted the pages together. It had taken over 2 weeks to finish, and Steve had developed an allergic reaction to the paste, but it was worth it. When Steve was done, the book had a secret compartment. It wasn't just a book anymore. It was a top secret book box. And inside that top secret book box was Steve's top secret notebook. And that top secret notebook was where Steve recorded all sorts of notes and observations, including, on page 1, a list of the 59 greatest books of all time. First on his list was a shiny red book called The Bailey Brothers Detective Handbook, written by MacArthur Bart. The handbook was packed with the real crime-solving tips and tricks employed by Sean and Kevin Bailey, aka America's favorite teenage super sleuths, aka the Bailey Brothers, in their never-ending fight against goons and baddies and criminals and crime. The Bailey Brothers, of course, were the heroes of the best detective stories of all time, the Bailey Brothers mysteries. And their handbook told you everything they knew. What to look for at a crime scene. Shoe prints, tire marks, and fingerprints. The ways to crack a safe. Rip jobs, punch jobs, and old man jobs. And where to hide a top secret notebook in a top secret book box. Basically, the Bailey Brothers Detective Handbook told you how to do all the stuff that the Bailey Brothers were completely ace at. The Bailey Brothers, of course, were the sons of the world-famous detective Harris Bailey. They helped their dad solve his toughest cases, and they had all sorts of dangerous adventures. And these adventures were the subject of the 58 shiny red volumes that made up the Bailey Brothers Mysteries, also written by MacArthur Bart. Numbers 2 through 59 on Steve Brixton's list of the 59 greatest books of all time were taken up by the Bailey Brothers Mysteries. Steve had already read all the Bailey Brothers books. Most of them he had read twice. Few he'd read 3 times. His favorite Bailey Brothers mystery was whichever one he was reading at that time. That meant that right now, as Steve lay on his lumpy bed, his favorite book was Bailey Brothers number 13, The Mystery of the Hidden Secret. Steve was finishing up chapter 17, which at the moment was his favorite chapter, and which ended like this. "Jumping jackals," dark-haired Sean exclaimed, pointing to the back wall of the dusty old parlor. "Look, Kevin, that bookcase looks newer than the rest." "General George Washington," his blond older brother cried out. "I think you're right." Kevin rubbed his chin and thought, "Hold on just a minute, Sean. This mansion has been abandoned for years. Nobody lives here. So who would have built a new bookshelf?" Sean and Kevin grinned at each other. "The robbers!" they shouted in unison. "Say, I'll bet this bookshelf covers a secret passageway that leads to their hideout," Sean surmised. "Which is where we'll find the suitcase full of stolen loot," Kevin cried. The two sleuths crossed over to the wall and stood in front of the suspicious bookcase. Sean thought quietly for a few seconds. "I know. Let's try to push the bookcase over," Sean suggested. "Hey, it can't be any harder than Coach Biltmore's tackling practice," joked athletic Kevin, who lettered in football and many other varsity sports. "1, 2, 3, heave!" shouted Sean. The boys threw their weight into the bookshelf, lifting with their legs to avoid back injuries. There was a loud crash as the bookshelf detached from the wall and toppled over. The dust cleared away and revealed a long, dark hallway. "I knew it!" whooped Sean. "Let's go!" "Not so fast, kids," said a strange voice. "You won't be recovering the loot that easy." Sean and Kevin whirled around to see a shifty-eyed man limping toward them, his scarred face visible in the moonlight through the window. The man was holding a knife! That was where the chapter ended. And when Carol Brixton, aka Steve's mom, called him downstairs to dinner. Okay, so the first chapter, you learn that Steve is a big fan of these detective books, the Bailey Brothers. And he's read all 59, and a lot of them he's read more than once. And kind of leads you to maybe think what this book is going to be about. Maybe you're kind of thinking, well, looking on the back, kind of looking at the front, and reading that first chapter, maybe Steve himself is going to have to solve a mystery, and maybe he's going to use what he's learned in these Bailey Brothers books to help him solve that mystery. So anyway, so we don't know what that mystery is yet, but we will hear soon. I don't have our little calendar in front of us, so I can't quite remember what the order of events is, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to read the second chapter tomorrow. But we still aren't going to quite get to that real first mystery, although you're going to see that Steve is pretty good at it because he's going to kind of solve a little mini mystery. So, hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you guys here in a few days. See you later.